Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video on this TTR 125. Today I've got these wheels to put back on the bike, and there's some things coming in the mail that I'm pretty excited about. So to start things off, I want to get this bike off the stand, so let's chuck these wheels back on the bike. First up is going to be the front wheel. Gonna get things lined up right here, and then slide the axle through. It's never a bad idea to throw some grease on the axles. Helps prevent rust and keeps everything working smoothly. Time to set the torque spec. The front wheel on this bike is 32 foot-pounds. Now I'm gonna make sure these brakes are working properly. Seems like this lever has a lot of free play in it. Either these brakes need to be bled or the lever just needs to be adjusted. I'm gonna check into this. It is definitely easier to adjust the lever than bleed the brakes. So I'm gonna check into this first. Loosen up the lock nut right here. And if I thread this bolt in some more, it'll take out some of that free play. Just gonna go in a few turns and see how that feels. Definitely took out some of that free play. So I'm just gonna go until the brakes have a little bit of drag on them and then back off a turn or two. So as you can tell, the brakes have some drag on it right now. The wheel just isn't spinning as free as it should. So I've gone too far on this adjustment bolt. I'm gonna back it out 2 or 3 turns. Then just tighten down this lock nut and we'll be set. So the brakes feel pretty good right there. A lot better than before. The front end is all done. Now it's on to mounting the rear wheel. So I was getting ready to mount this brake panel and I noticed the actuator arm is a little bit sticky. I definitely don't want no crusty brakes, so I'm gonna take this thing apart and freshen it up. I'm gonna start off by pulling off these brake shoes. And then I've got a bolt holding this actuator arm onto the shaft. Gonna loosen that up, and I should be able to slide this arm off the shaft. Once I pull off the shaft, we'll be able to see what's causing it to be sticky. Most likely it's this dirt packed up in here and needs to be cleaned up and re-greased. Oh, you can see it's pretty stiff. It's gonna need a little bit of help with a soft hammer. Yeah, it definitely needed to be cleaned up, that's for sure. Wow, I have not seen one this sticky in a while. So it's pretty obvious why this shaft was sticking. Got some dirt and rust buildup on it. So I'm gonna bring these parts over to the sink, clean them up, and apply some fresh grease on them. Now with all that garbage off the shaft, time to grease things up and slap it back together. This should be working super smooth now. Oh yeah, that feels buttery. Man, this feels so much better now. Really glad I cleaned that up. Here's the final test. Doesn't get much better than that. Just got back home and look what my bro Devin hooked me up with. A new microphone for the camera. Appreciate that, man. So the audio should be a lot better from here on out, especially if I'm going outside and there's any sort of wind. Let's plug this thing in and test it out. Alright, this should sound a lot better. What do you guys think? So I've got this brake panel all freshened up. Just gonna mount it on the bike and get this rear wheel mounted up as well. It's a little easier to have this rear brake panel mounted up on the rod before installing the rear wheel. So that's what I'm gonna do right here. One thing you can do to make drum brakes work better is sanding the pads and the drum on the hub. Right here I've got 100 grit. So around 100, 120, maybe even 80 grit would work perfect. So this just creates a nice fresh surface for the pads and the drum to mesh with each other, and that provides a lot better braking. So I'm not going to really sand it that much, just a light sand to knock off any glazing on top of it. Once you're done sanding, it's always a good idea to clean things up with some brake cleaner. Alright, now it's time to slide the wheel back on the bike. Got the spacer in, just gonna feed it into the swing arm now. On this side, I'm gonna line up the brake panel, and then I should be able to slide the whole assembly right into the swing arm here. Now with this wheel in place, just gonna grease up the axle and slide it through the bearings. Now on this side, I've got the adjuster plate, the washer, and the nut. Now I can't quite tighten down the axle just yet. I've got a new chain to install, so to prep for that, I'm gonna put the adjuster plate all the way forward, or all the way at the smallest point on both sides, just like that. And then I'm gonna tighten down the axle just a little bit, just snug it up. At this point, the wheel is all the way forward in the swing arm. So when I install a new chain, I'll have plenty of room right here to compensate for the chain stretching. All right, now I'm gonna line up the new chain. So here's how I'm gonna do this. Line it up on the sprocket, kind of spin it around, and then feed it towards the front of the bike. And for the front sprocket, you wanna make sure the bike is in neutral. That way you can hook the chain on and spin it around. And then right here, I'm trying to feed it through this little gap beneath the swing arm. There's a little slider here that it slides on, and once I'm through there, it's clear sailing from here on out. All right, now I'm gonna put the bike in gear to hold the front sprocket and the chain in place. All right, moving on to the rear sprocket. Let's see how long this chain is. Gonna feed it up onto the sprocket. Looks like we're a link too long. So actually, if I cut one link out of it, I won't be able to get it together. So I'm gonna leave the chain how it is right now. This is as tight as I can get it. I'm gonna leave the chain how it is and start sliding the axle back to try to get the correct tension out of it. I'm gonna loosen up the axle a little bit just so I have enough room to slide it back. I'm gonna start at 2 clicks out on either side. So as you can see, this is quite a bit more loose than what it should be. I'm gonna have to keep cranking these axle adjusters back. So I'm gonna go 2 notches at a time. So right here, we're at 4 out, and that's still really loose. I'm gonna go 2 more. And again, you gotta keep it even on both sides. It's getting better. 2 more. It's getting pretty close. I think 1 or 2 more notches and it'll be good to go. So right there is pretty close. So I should probably get this master link in before I go any further with this. Just gonna slip the link through both ends of the chain, pop the plate on, and then it's onto the clip. For this clip, you wanna have the open part facing in the opposite direction that the chain is moving. So as the wheel is spinning, it's obviously spinning forward like this. And so I'm gonna need to mount the clip with the open part facing back. just like this. And a set of needle nose always does the trick for securing the clip. Simple as that. So now I can finalize the chain tension. On this side, I am right before number 4 on the adjuster plate. Let's go see how the other side looks. Yep, looks like it's in the same position, right before number 4. So my rule of thumb for chain tension is I'll go 3 fingers in the middle of the swing arm. So at the end of the chain slider is about center, somewhere about right here. So that's a little bit more than 3 fingers. And then especially with the new chain, that's gonna stretch right away. I'm gonna have to tighten this up a little bit. So I'm gonna clip it one more on both sides. So that should be pretty close right there. So now we're good to go for chain tension. Just gotta tighten up this axle. Now I think I've shown you guys this trick before for getting drum brakes to work really good. So I'll push down the rear brake pedal and lock something in. Right here would be perfect. I'll just put a wrench in between this gap right here. Try to lock down the rear brakes. So how this works is if you have the rear brakes locked down before you tighten the axle, it'll line up the brake pads and the drum. And then when you tighten the axle, it'll secure everything into place. Just gotta lock these rear brakes down, and then I can tighten up the axle. All right, that should do it. The torque spec on this rear axle is 43 foot-pounds. All right, as soon as I pull out this wrench, we'll be golden on the wheels and tires. I've got one more thing to check on this rear wheel. This brake pedal seems like it's got a lot of free play in it. So I'm gonna tighten up the adjuster nut back here a few turns. It's a little better. So that should be good to go. It's got a little bit of free play, but it also grabs at a good spot too. This thing is already looking much, much better just with new tires. Imagine once I get the rest of these parts on here. Here is what came in the mail today. My buddy Anyal Garcia, who is a subscriber here on YouTube, hooked me up with this mint exhaust system. And it's got the baffle in it as well. So it's not gonna sound hideous like the system that's on this bike. I really appreciate that, man. I'm gonna mount this thing up and put it to good use. Well, the TTR is pretty much good to go at this point. One last little thing. Once I pull the bike off the stand, I'm gonna mount it to the skid plate again, and then I think I'm gonna take it for a rip down the driveway. It is dark out right now, so I can't really do much riding on the tracks, but I'm gonna take it for a rip down the driveway and see how she rides. Hopefully it starts first kick. Sweet. So it seems to be running pretty decent. It's gonna need a little bit of fine tuning, just like any other bike would. So it's got a little bog on the bottom, and then up top, it's gonna need to be cleaned up a little bit more too. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. think with a fuel screw and needle adjustment, this thing should be running tops. Believe it or not, I've got some more goodies on the way for the TTR, and pretty soon here, I'll be able to take it out on the pit bike track too. So I will keep you guys posted on that. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, everyone.